Okay, so this is my Fun Friday assignment. So for question one, they ask, I have to look at my little notes here. How are they arranged in memory? And to first explain, dynamic arrays are different from static arrays where the size has to be defined in the beginning for static arrays, whereas, and they can change. Dynamic arrays can grow or shrink uh, during like input for like user input and memory management, memory arrangement. Dynamic arrays are typically used in the heap or allocated in the heap, which is the best location for memory, just because you don't use space that is limited. And initially, a dynamic array is allocated with a certain capacity, right? For example, with like a static, which you can't resize. So after you run out of that space, you can't do anything. Versus the heap, if you are filling up, you can delete memory and you can just free up space, and it's continuous. The advantages are, like I said, the flexibility of it. They can grow or shrink as needed. Efficient access, and it's just for an easier use. More so when you get into linked list, which we haven't for this class, but that's what I know that it's easier for that. The disadvantages is with memory waste, because when you know what size your array is going to be at initialization, then you are not wasting any memory. Versus you have to create a dynamic array with maybe like an index of like 10 or capacity of 10, but you're only using 5 of the indexes, and that means memory waste. And you also, like, if they do fill up, you do have to resize, which means that a new block of memory must be allocated, and that can be time consuming. Let me see the other question. Oh, how to create and delete dynamic arrays. So creating a dynamic array is pretty easy. It depends on if you want to do a character or integer array. So you have to use pointers. For dynamic arrays, you put the pointer before. Let me see if I did it. I didn't do it for a single one, but we can use this for an example. You can imagine that this is just a single array. It would be one pointer instead of two, and you would equal it to either a new in whatever type your matrix or your array is. Sorry, and you would put a size of maybe 10 or 20. It doesn't really matter because you can resize it since it's a dynamic array. And then you must at the very end delete the dynamic array. For example, this is the matrix, but you dereference it and you obviously don't use the pointer. That way you delete. You don't have a memory leak, because memory leak is bad. So that's how you create and delete dynamic arrays. Let's see if I have another question. Where are dynamic arrays allocated? Okay. Like I said before, dynamic arrays are allocated on the heap. The stack is used for static memory allocation, and with the stack, its size is limited. It won't be able to kind of bounce around. For example, uh, for dynamic arrays, then the heap memory doesn't have to be right next to each other, so it's able to just freely be as it is. And versus the stack, everything has to be right next to each other, and it makes it limited. And just if you run out of that space, your code will just crash. Uh, let's see. I think we can get into the actual questions now. Right. So we were given two integers m and n, and we were told to create a 2D array with rows and columns. I obviously put m as my rows and n as my columns. And the question three is to put them into a float matrix. So as you can see, you can put the, let's see, store the transport matrix into a dynamic array and output the values in according to the transpose. What is the transpose of a matrix? So for my code, I combine question two and question three, right? So for example, first it would ask for the matrix size. So let's just run it, and then I'm gonna explain what each kind of line is. So for example, if the size was a 2 by 3, you put a 2 by 3, and the matrix values, we do something easy like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It would give you the original 2D array, and it would also give you the transposed matrix for question three. Okay, now what was my thinking process towards all of during creating the code is what I'm going to be answering next. So for step one, let's see, you have to obviously take input for the number of rows and columns. So you take user input. So here you just give a question into the number of rows and columns, and then you input m, and you put n, and then you create your matrix. Now this will be kind of like entering that like two-dimensional area. So for example, when you make a dynamic array, you use one pointer, and you use two dynamic arrays to create a matrix, right? So you use a double pointer, and you create the first dynamic array and we're using floats because that's what the question asked. So that's why my type is float. Uh, so I put it first to the rows, right? And I create a dynamic 2D array to store the matrix. And then you input the matrix values. You ask the user to, put the matrix values in, since you already asked what the size is. And I created a for loop for that. Let's see. For the next one, I created a way to output the original 2D array first. So that's why this comes first, and then the transposed matrix comes second. This is very important, or else your code will kind of not go in chronological order, I found out. And in step five, let's see, I created a dynamic 2D array for the transpose. This was a little bit more complicated because I ran into errors with confusing rows and columns. For example, I still used a pointer right here, which I wasn't supposed to. I'm not really entirely sure, but what I know is that we do the same kind of instructions for creating a matrix. Use your double pointer and use your single pointer right here to create a new type. And you create a for loop to sort of put in that new information. Right. And you kind of just going in reverse because if you know it's now flipped. So instead, I just changed the order of operations. And then I compute the transpose. This is all computing the transpose. So I output the transpose matrix here. And in the very end, you have to free, like I said, for how to delete and how to create and delete dynamic arrays, you have to free the allocated memory from the original matrix, which I forgot to do because I was only freeing the allocated memory for the transpose matrix. So when I ran my code, it didn't work at all because I forgot to delete the original memory from the original matrix. So here, you have to create a for loop, and then you delete the matrix I. You delete every index in matrix I. You delete the rate, yeah, and then here you do the same thing for the transpose. And yeah, we can do one of the examples. For instance, I think one of the examples were using floats, right? So if I do a 3 by 4 and I enter, let's see, I don't know, 3.2, 4.4, 5.7, and 7.1. It's gonna take a while. Just gonna put 2.1, 3.2, 4.1, and then 5.1. Just gonna speed this up. See, so it's supposed to be a total of, let me count it out. The 3 by 4 is supposed to be a total of 12 numbers. So let me see if I have 12 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. One more. 6.4. All right. So enter the matrix values, and it will give it to me in order. So we have the original 2D array, which 3.2, 2.4, 4.7, 7.1, and then the next line, and this should be flipped. So it should be 3.2, 2.1, and 1.2, 2.4, 3.2, 7.9 for the transpose matrix, and so forth. And that is my video.